Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ma. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for joining this conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for thanking us. Hi, Osayi. How are you today?
I'm sending you e-greetings and e-hugs.
Okay. I'm giving them from a social distance.
Yes, so.
All right, so to our guest, we're starting right now as planned. So Thursday Talks. We started this in 20, and the goal was to have NGOs come together and discuss on what we can do, how to fix issues we face, how we can discuss how we can get sustainable amongst others. So the twist is, we started this because of the conversation Mr. Innocent had with Mr. Gbenga, Sesan, Budget, Shewunibide, Yemi Adamolekun of EI, and the Future Project. And we started, he was the first guest, actually in March 2018 at EI's office. And today is our second year anniversary. So this edition rather is the second year since we started. So we've been doing this consistently for 2 years. And we are grateful to Budget, to the Future Project, to Y Nigeria for doing this together with us. So each month we rotate this conversation across the different partners, and it's been really good. And so today we want to talk about how NGOs first can be sustainable, but basically the future of philanthropy in Nigeria. I mean, there's a conversation around the fact that things will change. Funders might want to give a lot more less organizations money. And with COVID-19 as well, there's that update. And so we want to discuss what philanthropy would look like and what we can do as NGOs to remain sustainable in spite of the changes that happen. So while I'm talking, please, you can use the chat box and just introduce yourself. We want to know your name, where you're joining the conversation from. Let's just meet ourselves as I'm doing the introductions. So the first panelist we have is Innocent Chukwuma. Mr. Innocent is Regional Director of Ford Foundation, West Africa. Now, before joining Ford Foundation, he founded and led Clean Foundation to promote public safety, security, and accessible justice in West Africa. He also held various positions or posts with the Civil Liberties Organization, one of Nigeria's first human rights organizations. He was also the chair of Atos Global Alliance, a global network of nonprofits. Now, he also served as a visiting lecturer at Harvard Kennedy School of Government and holds a master's degree in criminal justice from the University of Leicester and a bachelor's degree in religion from the University of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining this conversation, sir. We're really glad to have you.
Thanks
Our next panelist is Ms. Osayi Alile. Now, she's the CEO of ACT Foundation and a consultant for Access Bank PLC on the CSR project. She also was the executive director of Faith Foundation, a leading private sector-led non-profit organization in Nigeria for 8 years. Now she's a facilitator, a management trainer. She's also a consultant on non-profit management and strategy. Indeed, we can say she's a sustainability expert and speaker. And you see why we're having her on this conversation. So she's also the founding curator of Global Shapers Forum Nigeria. She sits on several boards, including Wimbase, House of Tara, chairperson of Zafire Events, amongst many others. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. We're really great to have you as well. And our moderator, Mr. Gbenga Sesan. Now, Mr. Gbenga Sesan is the executive director of Paradigm Initiative, a Pan-African social enterprise working on digital inclusion and digital rights through its offices in Cameroon, Nigeria, Tanzania, Togo, and Zambia. Now, before he started PI, as we call it, he led the Lagos Digital Village, a joint project of JAN, Junior Achievement of Nigeria, Microsoft, and Lagos State Government. Now, I was originally trained as an electronic and electrical engineer at Obafemi Awolowo University. Now, Mr. Gbenga has completed several executive educations across the world. Now, we've just listed a few places. I mean, Lagos Business School, New York Group for Technology Transfer, Oxford, Harvard, Stanford. Mr. Gbenga has this list. I found it before. I don't know where it is again. He has this list where he has different trainings he has gone through across the world. It's quite, I mean, don't go through it if you don't want to be. But yeah, he has done so much in this space. And then he has served as a member of the Presidential Committee on Harmonization of Information Technology, Telecommunications, and Broadcasting sectors in 2006, and the roadmap for the achievement of accelerated universal broadband infrastructure and services provision in 2013. Now, the twist is that when he started in 2010, Mr. Gbenga was one of our founding board members, and he had to leave in 2015 thereabout. So thank you so much for joining this conversation as well, sir. At this point, I would hand over to Gbenga Sesan, who is not in presently. Once he joins in again, I would hand over to him to continue the conversation. But please, as you know, some people have asked questions before now, and we recorded them. We would take these questions as conversation goes on. As we start first, we would just engage the panelists a bit for about an hour, and then give room for more questions when we are done with questions we have compiled. So please and please, you're welcome. I can see some people have been introducing themselves. More, please tell us where you're from, your name, your organization. I mean, aside just coming to discuss on sustainability, it could also be a very good networking opportunity. So we want to know you. Yes. So thank you so much once again for joining this conversation. So Mr. Gbenga Sesan, over to you, sir.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
It's Yemi.
Is it just me?
No, it's not just
Okay.
you. Morning.
Hi, Yemi.
Hey,
Okay,
Osayi.
all right.
Sorry.
I was trying to adjust my internet.
Gbenga's audio is not on yet, so I'm not sure if you can hear us or see us. But so I'll just go ahead so we can get the conversation started. So thank you, Osayi, and thank you, Mr. Chukwuma, for joining us for this conversation. I would, I guess, ladies first. I'll start with Osayi. Just a bit about your thoughts. The topic said future of philanthropy. Aha, Gbenga has joined. Gbenga, can you hear? Unmute yourself. I was just about to do your job. Can you hear me? Okay. When you can hear me, start talking and I'll hand over to you. So back to Osayi. So the topic said future of philanthropy. So it's both sides, both demand and supply side. Both what you and Innocent see as the new landscape. Funding is changing. Organizations are complaining, quote and unquote, of reduced funding, but organizations are also having to think about what they need to do to be sustainable beyond grants. So just your thoughts around where we are at this new space. And I think also this new season we're in globally also provides some additional level of thinking that needs to be done.
Okay, gosh, you know, I've been on a few webinars in the last few weeks, and sometimes when I'm done with it, I ask myself, I mean, are you really saying what you actually believe? And I'm going to speak as openly as possible. And especially because no one has walked this road before. So a lot of the advice that we are giving is based on what we think might work. And I tell people that everyone is different. So the fragility of life is always very present, especially at this time. We're now seeing it more than ever. So even for nonprofit leaders, the fragility of our organization is even showing, even blaringly, more than we will even think about. So everybody's, there's a fear going around. I mean, I had one yesterday and someone was saying, yes, it's like you just trying to swim across a river and you cannot really swim. And then you're wondering to yourself, what's the best way? How do I get over to the other side? And then you can see land on the other side. So we're all at that point, and we're all seeing the impending decline in the percentages of our donations. We're seeing recession is coming. We're even seeing the big players that are complaining also and wondering what to do next. And we all know that, especially now that we're talking about Nigeria, we know that this is not a problem that is just fixed in one particular country. It's everywhere. None of us expected this kind of sudden disruption. We knew that a disruption was coming, but we didn't know it was going to be like this in terms of lives and the society and how it's changed everything. So, I mean, we can see it. What we do going forward is, of course, talk about some things that we can all do to make things just slightly better. And every professional is, of course, scrambling to devise new operations plans. I mean, I'm in meetings every day trying to see what do we do different, how do we manage the situation, and then how do we keep our grantees surviving even past this time. And not only for them surviving, even we as an organization surviving past this time. Of course, we are young compared to a Ford. We're not even up to 3 years old yet. And so our endowment also is not very strong, but we're trying to see where else can we get revenues from and stuff like that. So everybody's trying to push survivor, but I'm not sustainability, but more survivability at this time, and saying how can we survive, and then we can now begin to talk about sustainability. So that's the new, what we see ourselves in, and a lot of constituencies and a lot of grants makers and grantees and non-profits or social enterprise is seeing them, and even SMEs. So it's not only about our own sector, but across board as well. So I'll start off with that, saying that we need to really think more in terms of survival and how do we manage irrespective of what is going on. And then, of course, realizing that, as someone said yesterday, Osayi, there's some things you can't control. So if you can't control it, the ones that you can control it, how do we manage and how do we control and manage our own, just, your own nucleus, and make sure that you survive past this time. And once we do that, then we can see. I think when we go forward, and we can talk about the different things that we can think about, and talk about the different challenges and the vulnerability of even the economy and the vulnerability of NGOs, especially even in Nigeria, because we're not a very structured sector. Also, and then see how we can move forward in terms of innovation and collaborations, and see how we can come together in terms of partnership and moving forward. I don't know if anyone can hear me.
Yes, could hear you clearly.
Everywhere, everything's quiet. Yes, okay.
Your network needs deliverance. Okay, because we can't hear you.
My apologies. I don't know if everyone can hear.
It's not very clear.
Now clear.
Okay. So let me go, while we're trying to that one out, let me go over to Innocent. So Innocent, if you could do your own introductory remarks and sort of your thoughts on where we are. I like Osayi's point about survivability versus even let's survive first before we start talking sustainability. So over to you.
Great. Let me start by congratulating the organizers. I'm hearing an echo. Is everybody hearing me well?
I hear you clearly. Gbenga,
we can hear the echo as well.
Gbenga, mute your mic. If you can hear me, mute your mic. Or let me try and see if I can do it.
Okay, great. So very happy to be here, and thank Budget, Niger, Future Project, Enough It's Enough, and all the organizers that have put this together and have sustained it these past 2 years. It's not all the time that you have an idea over tea, beer, whatever it is that you drink, and you take it forward and sustain it in an environment like this. So my heart out to you guys. I want to dwell a little bit on the basis when you talk about future of philanthropy and also the demand side, the non-profit sector. I think we need to remind ourselves where all these started, how far we have moved, and where we are at this point where, as Osayi highlighted, we seem to be facing an existential crisis. And when you talk about philanthropy, a lot of people think it's something that the Western nation exported to us, and then we grabbed it and tried to run with it, which is not actually true, because if you look at the various communities and nationalities that came together to make up Nigeria, we have deep-rooted individual, communal, and family giving that are entrenched in our culture. If you look at the projects that have been done in our various communities through communal spirits and all of that, they are quite immense. But when you look at institutional giving, either through corporate platforms, that's when you begin to see it as something that has a recent history. And from the literature, we learn and trace it back to Andrew Carnegie, who in 1889 wrote the essay that later became known as the Gospel of Wealth, where he essentially enjoined people of wealth who, if you remember the 19th century, when he wrote that letter, it was a period of great wealth imbalance. People have made tons of money in manufacturing and production and all of that. And he basically challenged them that if they didn't give a benefaction to structures and projects and activities that essentially give the poor a sense of belonging, give them some sense of dignity in labor, that he would come back to haunt them later. And that was how, if you like, how philanthropy as we know it today started. And all the seminal figures in American capitalism, the Rockefeller, the Carnegie, the Ford, and the MacArthur, essentially embraced that gospel, which was founded on charity, what the rich do to the poor, and all of that. So 200 years later, it is still at that, which is my little challenge with philanthropy. We are still asking those who have to give a little more. And philanthropy is still viewed in that rubric of being a charity, whereas the future should actually be justice. So we should be moving from generosity to justice. And the fact that 200 years later, 140 years later, we're still talking about charity is one of the challenges that we should push back on, not only those of us who are in philanthropy, also those in the non-profit sector, realizing that why people have more than enough to give means that something has been exploited somewhere. And if we remember the words of Martin Luther on this, in 1964, one of the things he said before he died the following year, he said, philanthropy is good, but the philanthropists must not forget the circumstances of economic injustice that makes philanthropy relevant and necessary in the first place. So yes, it's good to give, but if we are looking at the future of philanthropy, more so in this era of COVID-19 pandemic that has highlighted the huge inequalities we are facing in the world, not only are we, those who are working in philanthropy or pretending to be spending monies of those who made it because we didn't make it ourselves, but more importantly, those on the demand side, the non-profit sectors that need these resources to do their work, don't look at it as a charity or a generosity. Make demands on us, move in the direction of justice, because if we don't see philanthropy moving in that direction of generosity to justice, we will not be able to run our organization on a sustainable basis, solve the problems that we are confronting with on a sustainable basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think major announcement is that I'm taking over moderating duties because Gbenga has been unable to connect. So bear with me because I wasn't prepared to do so, but we shall continue. Osayi, as Innocent was speaking, you were sort of sighing in, I guess I would say, in agreement. What are your thoughts? I mean, you are also manage a fund, as he said, that not your personal cash. What are your thoughts about moving from people just being kind and donating part of their money to justice?
I mean, I understand where Innocent is coming from, and I can see where, because even for me, especially giving an example with what's happening with COVID, everyone that has come to speak to me about, okay, we want to feed. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what we are doing. But what I've always asked is, how do we manage and maintain this even after this particular season passes? And so I do understand where it's coming from, and understanding also the strategy and the big thinking of where we are. The only thing that I'm as he's speaking and I'm thinking about is, which is what comes to my mind all the time, is that we are still not at that phase where when he mentioned justice, we're still not there yet. And yes, it's something that, I mean, by now we should have gotten to a place where it's a bit more, where we feel that we are maybe from class 1 to 6, we're in class 2 or class 3 now, but we kind of, I know that's why when I mentioned before, I was talking about the fact that the industry still is not delicate and is not structured. And we're still at a very, very minimal stage where we do things because something is happening and we just do it. And we need to think past that to be able to grow something that's a bit more mature and that can be, strong and sustainable in the longer term. And we're not so dependent on philanthropy and what people have out there. So I understand it, and then I'm thinking to myself, okay, if we look at it that way, how do we back up from it, or how do we manage it in the society and the environment we see ourselves in? And then saying, okay, even if we do see it, how do we put some structures in place that begins to get us ready for that time, but also begin, and so we can also still deal with the now that we find ourselves in now. Because you can't say because of that, we're not going to be able to manage some things. We still have to do what we have to do. And I think that's what we are both doing, and especially with Ford, that has been in Nigeria for over 50 years and I've been existing for 100 years. So those are the things that we think about, and we have to think through it and be a bit more structured and a bit more modern in the way we see philanthropy and the way we see sustainability as well.
Thank you. And I think one of the challenges is even the conversation around what we see as philanthropy and giving, as you said, in a structured way. Innocent made the point about the way we're as traditionally as we are. So a lot of Nigerians will pay school fees, we would pay support, house rent and all of that, but that's not in any structured way. And it's not not thought of as philanthropy in that sense. But if you really want to talk about it in terms of giving and support and structures for what's it called, safety nets, that's the word I'm looking for, that we have that in a different sort of way. And in a sense, I think subconsciously for those of us who do it, is almost a recognition that there's a responsibility that we have to do it, but it's just not structured and framed that way. I mean,
if you look at what's happening with packages and the feeding, people have just taken the responsibility to do what they have to do. Yeah. And and when people send me messages and say, okay, please, can you donate some money for it? I don't even think about it. I just feel to myself that it's my responsibility. So those things are, but I mean, of course, I'm just giving an example. Different communities, even sometimes it's just basic estates. People are feeding the less privileged in their own estate and doing it quietly, and nobody even knows that they're doing what they're doing. So those are the things that also come into play when you talk about, when Innocent mentioned that we've been doing philanthropy for so many years, but not in the way is defined, but in our own way and what we see as necessary at a particular time.
Indeed. And I think to your point, maybe we'll dive a bit there before we do questions. Do you see, there's a famous quote about not wasting a crisis. And I heard you when you were speaking to Larry Olushola a few days ago, talking about the fact that people are surprised at the sheer scale of poverty that we have. But we're feeding in a sense, but that doesn't change anything structurally or fundamentally. So we feed, and everybody goes back to work, at least in Lagos, on Monday. So there's not that pressure to do daily feeding. Is that it? Are we done? We've done a good deed for the season. Everything goes back to normal. Are you seeing people asking sort of deeper question, or it's more around let's make sure people are fed and we keep it moving?
From my own point of view, I would say 80% of people are doing it just because this is what's going on at this time, and I understand where they are coming from. The deeper questions, which I think even Innocent mentioned, is what people don't think about. And I must tell you, when I speak to 10 people a day, at least 7 of them are in shock about the amount of poverty they see in Nigeria today. They're in shock. They're like, I was driving down the road and I just saw people standing collecting bags. And I mean, where did they come from? And I'm thinking, we've had them in our society for years. I mean, these are people that you see every day walking around looking for buses or so, but they're in shock and they can't even believe it. And they keep on telling me, I'm sure they're not really hungry because they're seeing free food, and it's just a normal way of, because some of us are still locked up in our own shells and in our own bubbles and comfort zones and stuff like that. So these things do occur, but it's just how do we transfer it from what we are seeing daily to be, as you said, into a different way. But a lot of people don't see it, and they don't think it's something that do occur or it's a problem in Nigeria, and they even when you talk about NGOs are still working, they say, what are they doing? The government is doing all the work. So what are the NGOs doing?
Right.
What are they doing? So these things happen. Yeah.
Indeed, and I think you're right, because we have very few sort of large, if I want to use the word, NGOs that people know. So there are a lot more organizations that sort of community-based organizations doing work at the local community level. So for those in Lagos, that obviously a lot of people won't have a clue what the CBOs in Akwa Ibom are doing, for example, and that also shapes how they see the space. Gbenga, let's see if you're back, so you can go to your questions. This one. So unmute yourself and let's see if we can hear you. Right, okay. Okay, you've unmuted. Speak, let's see if we can hear you. Maybe not.
Okay, so while we are trying to get him on board, I wanted to chime in a little bit and just explain a little more. The charity aspect of philanthropy is very important, especially at a period like this. But it's important when we're engaging in it to know that it is the symptoms that we are treating, right? We're using charity to try to ameliorate the symptoms. But the underlying factors, if you like, that...
Hi, Yemi, can you hear me? I do not trust this connection.
Yemi, Gbenga, we can't hear you properly.
Gbenga, can you hear us? So the delay is also quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Okay, let me not stress you. It's fine. I'll finish it. Don't worry. So if you can hear the rest of us, join the conversation. If anything changes, feel free. Charity dealing with the symptoms. Yes.
Charity is aimed at dealing with the symptoms, but we all know there are underlying factors. There are systemic issues that have made it possible wealth to the extent that I have extra to give in charity. And what I like it to is who are billionaires. And then the policy facilitates and breaks barriers for them to keep amassing, compared with another one that actually creates a level playing field for 1,001 SMEs to emerge and try to solve social problems. To SMEs massing out, employing, engaging, and solving problems. You see the ones that, which is where the justice lens needs. How we promote policy and the kind of environment, both from the local to the national level. That's one way of looking at it. And another one is that even in context, in fact, one thing I have learned within this 19 period is that no policy is politically neutral or value neutral. Whether it's a health policy, whatever you think about there are underlying values, there are underlying ideologies. When government comes and say, let's lock down, in a society where 90% of people are trapped in the informal hand-to-mouth sector, you don't need a soothsayer to say that that is the way to social unrest, if you don't. So, and again, which is where I have my little with my colleagues in the non-profit sector. When this policy came out, or even before it's announced, we need to know where it's headed and begin to push back so that we don't have to wait 1 month down the line when a lot of harm has been done to start pushing for. So this whole compliance approach, which is playing into the charity mode of philanthropy, needs to change in the sense that we make the demands, we push back in the interest of the majority of the people who do not have, the voice to speak up for them. And when you start acting in that direction, we are now moving towards the justice end of philanthropy. So it's like a spectrum. On one hand, you have a charity. On the one end of the spectrum is charity. And then the goal ultimately is the extreme other side, which is justice. And in between is where we are trying to play and have a space.
And I'll bring back Osayi before we go to questions, because I think you've set the tone for something she can speak to quite well, based on simply her track record. So from running Fate Foundation to now running a foundation, it touches on the 2 points that you've highlighted, the role of SMEs and empowering 1,000 hire people and keep people engaged, to policies that empower just a few. And if you see as well, even with this COVID narrative, we've seen a lot more of the focus on our billionaires to donate. And even though, as Osayi herself mentioned, we have a lot of people, individuals, small businesses doing their part in their communities, we don't see that as amplified at 10 o'clock news or 9 o'clock news as we see when one billionaire drops a billionaire. But it's the small bits that people are doing in the communities, because they are members of those communities. They live there, they work there, their employees are from there, or their church members are from there, that they're able to give back. We don't see as much of that. So, Osayi, a bit of your worlds in focus.
Yemi, I need to know what the question is, because I mean, what's the question?
Really, to be honest,
I know what Innocent is talking about.
More your reflection, having been in both spaces, as in from someone who has tried to empower communities, and then looking at sitting on top of a foundation that works in a particular way. What are your thoughts on what, and I guess within the Nigerian context, what can we be doing, maybe is the question, or what should we be doing more of? But if you take Fate Foundation, for example, as far as I know, only one Fate Foundation at that scale. I don't know of any other foundation, for example, that focuses on empowering SMEs. So you have, if I'm not, or is there any other?
I mean, now you can see the ones that are being run by Lagos State, the LS, what's the name called now? I mean, yes, LSTM. I mean, there are quite a few of them, and there's some outside of Lagos as well that are doing their work. I mean, the truth about it is that I still feel that there must be a mix of both the big players and the small ones, the ones doing the policies and the ones that are coming, especially, and I think I keep on repeating, especially in the environment that we work in today, and where we are at this moment, But I also understand where, and I keep on saying I understand where Innocent is coming from as well, in terms of we need to do things and do it better. We don't have to wait. One of the things I've also problem that we have, and we all work in a lot of isolations, and there's no fragmentation of all of us together achieving a certain goal together. So when these policies or things come to hit us, we kind of feel even more overwhelmed by them, and we're waiting for things become really difficult, because there's no organization that can come together and say, this is where we work with, this is a foundation that we're all under this particular umbrella, and we are pushing policies and changing the way things are done, in different NGOs, no matter how big you are, you can't grow past a certain sector. If you are under this sector,
Yes.
it's you will just you keep on. This is where you are. This is where the sector is. You keep on, no matter, even if you have billions, and this is where you are going to be, because one way or the other they will still be saying, oh, Nigerian NGOs, and so you find out that the ones that are doing extreme, they're changing things, being a voice outside of our sector, where we dwell, and our environment. And if strong voices together, you find that the sector needs to grow. And I'm going to be very general, going you to yourself next level, and then you become your voice is louder in the room when anyone in different meetings with this COVID. And I can't NGOs, local or Nigerian-based NGOs are sitting or trying to understand what is happening with NCDs, the policies that are changing and all that. So yes, they might call them in terms of implementation in the communities that they can't go to, but collaboration is still different. NGOs is still key. And we have it in all the platforms I'm speaking. That open our minds to see that we need to be able to collaborate, because you can never, ever work in isolation. No matter how big you are, you have to work with other people. You have to make sure that everybody's almost on the same page with you. And the small players need the big players need the small players. There are not many places that Ford can go to, even if they have all the money. Okay, donation, the money is to do what? If you cannot bring in some equipment, or you cannot create a solution, your money is not, it's money, but it's just in the bank. To think about and to reason through and say, okay, after this or with this issue happening, how do we even ask a Ford that is a big player in our sector to help us to see, okay, how can we bring and synergize things? And I must say it again, I'm speaking in as plain terms as possible, so that we all understand what we're saying, and we can also see how we can all move forward.
Fantastic. Now this takes me to a bit, and it's really the idea of a social enterprise being the model for the way forward. So it's not just an NGO that's waiting for grants, constantly applying for grants, and you're at the mercy of goodwill, quote unquote, but the whole idea of generating revenue on your own. So you're selling a service, you're selling something that's allowing you to generate revenue that obviously you then plow back to run the nonprofit that you're running. Now, obviously, as Osayi said, in the spectrum of where we are, from the big players to the small players, it won't apply to everyone. But could that be a way NGOs need to start thinking to survive and be sustainable? Innocent, I'll come to you.
Okay, great. So I think the fundamental thing to trash out first is to agree that it's not every social problem we have that can be solved through social
Yes. Yeah.
Market. There will always be room for grants.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So the important thing is, where do we draw that line? And for us in Ford Foundation, we are playing at both ends. We still have our grants running and still spend $13 million every year. But then we have a new stream of funding, which is the investment arm. It's coming directly from our endowment through our unit in New York called Mission Investing. And what are we doing is to say, what are the social problems where market solutions can come in? And what are the models that have been tested elsewhere? And what are the tools that we need to ensure that those problems are solved on a sustainable basis? This is where you have something like it's called a social impact bond. For instance, I look at what government is struggling with every day in the Northeast, in trying to rehabilitate the ex-militants. Government is spending billions of naira through the Northeast Intervention Agency or whatever it is. We don't know how rigorous the training of those people whom they say they are rehabilitating. They are being thrown back into society. Nobody's tracking to, get the rate of recidivism, if you allow that term, them going back to join Boko Haram. Whereas there are tested, because the whole issue of dealing with ex-militants, especially when they involve children, have been handled elsewhere, from Liberia to Afghanistan to Iraq, even Somalia. And there are groups in the social sector that have the track record of doing this. So the market can come in through social impact bond here. So government, how much are you spending on this? Government say, okay, 50 billion. Say, you know what, we can actually deliver that 30 billion for you, and with metrics that show you that we have thoroughly rehabilitated people with livelihood to engage them. And government agrees, okay, do it. So an investor can go and engage a social sector organization that is vast in training and rehabilitating people. Say, we want you to do this. How much will it take you to do? And you say 10, 15 billion. Say, fine, go and do it. We agree at the metrics. Over 18-month period, you see whether they delivered it or not. It's not only saving government money, government becomes more efficient. The social sector organization that is vast in this area is getting the funds they need to survive, so that they don't have to be going to the Ford Foundations of this world, cap in hand, begging. So market can solve that. You also have impact investing, which is not everybody wants to be a non-profit, but I also want to do good while doing well. How can I invest in a manner that enables me to achieve double or triple bottom line? So there are organizations that facilitate that, and people are investing. So we are moving funds from traditional private sector asset under management money to the center where you have impact investing. So this is where nonprofits in Nigeria really need to first sit down. What am I offering? The models I have, are they proven? Have they been tested? Can the market help me do this? And we have a conversation. And private equity companies, impact funds can't really come engage these nonprofits. So I see work growing, in fact, the work of nonprofit growing in this direction in the post-COVID-19 era, where both donor agencies and government will be looking for more efficient ways of delivering social services. But in moving towards social enterprise, we must not forget that it's not every social problem that the market can solve. And then my last point on this before I shut up is that, like everything in Nigeria, I actually see people are beginning to use the social enterprise model in a way that is perverse. Because at some point, this subsidization that comes
through... Wait, you said in a way that is perverse, right? I heard you. Okay.
Yeah, in a way that is perverse, which is, I say I'm a social enterprise, which means I'm engaging in commercial activities, I am getting revenues. At what point should I stop getting grants? Which is basically subsidizing what the market reward me. So that those who are depending on grants will continue to get grants. You say you're a social enterprise, grow and go to
exactly.
I can give you startup funds. Say over the next 3 years, I want the market to validate this product and pay for it. And it's been done in Nigeria. Look at Nollywood. A number of pioneers in the film industry. We are forever looking at Hollywood, forever looking at Cannes Festival to validate their product. A group of people came and say, you know what, Idumota Market will validate this. They made films that told local stories and people bought and they grew from there. So social enterprises, we need to ask ourselves, for how long will we continue to subsidize and subvent their activities before market takes it over? Because that is the growth plan.
Thank you. Interesting. And I think Osayi made the point a lot about just lack of structure. And I think for me, I stumbled into the space, wasn't planned. And that's what I've found over 9 odd years that I've been here, lack of structure. And I guess a bit, to be honest, I find a bit of an unwillingness to work on a structure. And which is why when you then have regulatory bills is basically what sort of pulls people together to fight a bill. But the idea is that if there was a structure and self-regulation, the NGO space in Nigeria wouldn't be as much under attack. So someone asked here, what is the impact? So maybe this one to you, Innocent. What is the impact of these social impact bonds if the social mission isn't achieved? what do you envision as the future of impact investing post-COVID? And what specific structures can nonprofits put in place now to prepare?
Very important question. You see, another name for social impact bond is pay for success.
It's what paid?
Pay for success.
Pay for success.
So it's outcome-based financing. So you, an NGO, say you deliver this, and you are told to go and deliver it. When you deliver it, you will be paid. And you may ask the question, where will I get the fund? So the guarantee you get from government to say, I have this guarantee for you that if you deliver on this, I will pay this amount. And me, a social impact operator, will say, can you warehouse that money in a bank or an entity that will assure me that if I deliver on this, you will pay that, because we are dealing with governments that do not fulfill their end of the bargain. So it's important in that transaction to say, while I go look for money to do this project, can you please warehouse this money that we have agreed that you pay me at the end of the project in a bank, a third-party entity that will do that. And then with the guarantee I got from government, I can go to an impact investor to say, just like a company goes with an LPO to a bank to borrow credit to implement. So an impact investor would say, okay, all the papers are fine. Do due diligence whether you have all the claims you made that you delivered, and advance you the money. That's the way the market works. And then you go and deliver. And when you deliver, government will pay you a bigger sum that you agreed. And out of that, you will pay whoever you borrowed money from. That is one model. The other model is that a private equity company can also develop a social investment portfolio, basically looking out for this kind of businesses from government. And when they get it from government, they look for a social impact actor that will deliver it at a fraction or a percentage of what they got. And when that social actor delivers on it, they go and show the government, we have made the goal, government pays them, and the third party warehousing that money releases it to them. This is the way the market operates. That's what we expect. So as to the second question about how impact investing will play out in the post-COVID-19, there are a number of organizations. You have Impact Investors Foundation, you have Africa Venture Philanthropy, and you have a specific subset of investors who self-identify as impact investors. They are all looking at where to invest, both for the short term, medium term, and long term around this pandemic. I've been involved in a number of the meetings. I was just invited the other day to join one, the Global Impact Investing Network is setting up. So they are looking at this, again, using the same market eye of due diligence, of finding out where you can get your double bottom line and making investment decisions like any private sector operator can make. But the question and the clear answer is that there is a market for solving social problems that do not always have to be solved through grants by the Art Foundation or Ford Foundations of this world. And local groups, non-profits should studied Yemi, they have impact investing program. They have social investment program. These are short executive education programs that people can get support to go for, and then come and create these products as a way of overcoming the impending crisis. Because donors like Ford, we are taking a hit from the stock market. At some point, it has to be passed, because it's from our earnings from the market that we put aside to give grants. So over a period of time now, you may not feel it in this year or next year, because in Ford we use 3-year cycle in funding. But from 2022, if our endowment does not grow back from where it was when this pandemic started, we are going to cut funding. So you can take it for granted that over the next 18 months to 2 years, fund availability is going to dwindle. And the question is, what are you doing here and now?
Definitely.
Thank you. So another question, and I think I'll throw this one to Osayi. One of the challenges, at least that I've seen in interventions during this COVID, is Nigeria's, it's almost like an aversion to data. we don't do very well with numbers, we don't do very well with data, don't know how many people there are, don't know how many people voted, how many people registered. So this person's question is, how do we ensure we're reaching the right people? Is the poor person necessarily, sorry, you are using an acronym, I don't know your names, so I won't call the name that shows up with the question. But is the poor person necessarily the person begging on the streets? For instance, I know a beggar who has a driver who delivers money to him on a daily basis, yet he still goes to the streets to beg. So how do we ensure we're helping the right people?
I mean, I don't even know if that's a question. You're talking about fraud, which we see regularly. And the truth about it is that if there's a soup kitchen somewhere and people come to line up to take food, there's no way whoever is standing giving out the food will say, you are not a beggar, you're a beggar. There's really no way. And that's one of the challenges that we have. I mean, and it's everywhere in the world. When their soup kitchens are open, they don't ask you for an ID card. They don't want to defame who you are as a human being. Ask you that, how much are you making per month and stuff like that. They just feel to themselves that for you to be on this line for the next 30 minutes, that means you actually need food. And they believe that they are giving you to the best of it. So I always say that there's a percentage of people that would stand and get these resources. They don't really need it. But if we are at least reaching out to the 70% that actually do it, then we've done a good job with that. Very good ways I've seen in the last week, smiling because I know someone with an idea which is
I'm losing you, Osayi. Can everybody else hear her? Innocent, could you hear her?
Hello?
Okay, I can hear you back now.
You can't hear me?
No, I lost you for a bit,
Sorry
but now
about that. Hello?
it's okay. Now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. The network here, and then of course it rained today, so everything just goes kaput. And so I'm just saying that we'll have those situations, yes. But I know that there's some people that are actually coming up with solutions that are not related to getting grants, but as social enterprises, helping people that are the poor, and they can actually, identify them, give them, it's almost like having a social security, give them a card where they can go into any market or supermarket and get the food that they need for a particular month or a particular week or something like that. So there's so many ideas coming up, and that's saying that in the midst of all, always have to think, where are the opportunities? Where can I see some light? And how do I walk into that light and say, how do I even change? And that's why everybody has to be very flexible and open your mind to think was different. And when Innocent was talking, I was nodding because of the hit on their grants, because of the years of endowment that they, for us, it's less than that. I can already see we're taking hits everywhere, and I can already tell because I know my grant is going to begin to dwindle. And I'm thinking to myself, how can we manage this situation? So everybody has to think outside of the box and say, okay, if this doesn't happen, what do we do? How do we structure things differently? And then wait for us to ride the tide.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've said it already.
Okay. Thanks, Osayi. So Osayi, basically just re-echoing what Innocent said about dwindling resources and having to think differently. And about it, and just to re-emphasize your point about opportunities, this COVID period, this whole thing about data, it's an excellent thing for someone to look into. The governor of Ekiti and the governor of Kaduna both spoke to the fact that they're using recharge numbers to figure out who are the poor people in their community. So if you are recharging your phone 100 naira in a month, that says something. So, nobody can come and dispute if that is important. To your point, if the person stood in line or didn't stand in line, that at least is something that is empirical that you can begin to look at. Tammy of Life Bank, realizing that, we need to make this thing a bit faster. So she innovated a process, sort of drive through. So I think, as you said, opportunities get us thinking. How, and I think, I mean, I'll ask
but Yemi, the truth is that data is still key. And I think we've had a major issue with information and data collection in Nigeria across board for years, you know. And we keep on, I mean, even for me, in the last few years, since we started, I've been looking for, I'm always asking, please, can someone, if you are a researcher, can you come and give us some information? We'll even fund you to go and get the information out there and put. And I know that a lot of other organizations that have been ahead of us have tried to put in, you know, tried as much as possible. But it's not like every other country that has some data, you know, where you can ask how many NGOs are in Nigeria. And I'm giving an example now that are focused on child something mortality between the age of. You can't find it. It's everybody all over again, and it takes us back, you know. So that's the same thing I'm talking about in terms of the organization of the sector, and not only in terms of the non-profit or the social sector, but even in terms of SMEs as well. And I know that Faith is doing quite a bit of work in that regard, but we just need to do more.
Excellent. So this sort of leads up to Yemi. I'll ask, because Yemi Akinshola asked the question, and it said setting up an NGO is challenging and will be more challenging post-pandemic. What advice do you have for a new NGO that is just coming up? I mean, my first answer is why, but I'll get Innocent and Osayi to speak to that. Innocent, want to set up any NGO? Advice?
My simple answer is that this is the worst time to imagine or think about setting up a new NGOs. If, as you have heard so far, the established are struggling and going to struggle more, then the question is, why do you want to go that route when you know your challenges will triple if theirs are doubling? And there's something we need to exploit, again, within the philanthropy sector. There is what is called donor advised funds, right? I am a philanthropist. I have money to give to a cause that I like. And I know that the overhead of setting up a foundation to run the little amount that I have will finish the amount in overheads. I will go and look for another foundation that does things that are close to what I want to do. And I said, okay, I can give this money to you, but can you use it for these specific purposes to serve this need? We saw how many billions Warren Buffett put in Bill Gates Foundation's money, and that is happening all over. And my question is, why can't we do similar thing in the nonprofit sector? If I have an idea of how something could be done better, rather than go and set up an organization and struggle and go through all the wahalas, we say in local language, why can't I go to an organization and sell the idea to them and they can drive it? The same thing, instead of one organization struggling to bear all the overhead costs that is involved in running one, why can't group merge? Abroad, many groups come together to merge. A lot of people forget that Carnegie Mellon University that we know today were a fusion, two educational institutions, Carnegie and Mellon, who are billionaires. Warren Buffett at the time was the richest man in the world, and he still had the modesty, the humility to say, you know what, I don't want to worry about all this overhead. Bill, I know you are good at this. Why don't you take this money? Can't we, replicate the same spirit if we say it's philanthropy, which is generosity, that is driving our work, or interest in seeing justice increase and expand in the world? That would be my advice to that person.
Thank you, Uncle Innocent.
Seriously, Osayi, that was so.
You know, you're speaking my heart.
That was so on point. And I'll tell you, because even for me as Yemi that runs a non-profit, the number of young people that have come to me for advice to set up a non-profit focused on governance, and my first question to them is always like, why do you want the headache of looking for money? Like, I know you're passionate about it. Why do you want that headache of office staff raising funds, constantly begging, looking for money? Why is that your headache? And one thing I found...
Yes.
Go ahead.
Let me continue. Sorry. And what you found?
One thing I found consistently is that people want to be called CEO, Executive Director, MD. So it has nothing to do with, and when they call it's my passion, I mean, it's not your passion. If it's your passion, then it's about the work. I tell people, if I find someone to be MD, because I'm an ops person, I'm an operations person. So if I find someone that wants to carry the headache of HR, fundraising, donor management, feel free. Let me just do ops. I will be so happy. But yeah, it's quite an, and so I really challenge people who are listening. If you want to set up,
in fact, I'm clapping for innocence. And I'm just like excited because this is where we need to get to. And I tell people that non-profit, it's a business. It's a business. Don't think to yourself, it's just passion that is going to make you survive. It is a business. You pay staff, you fundraise, you look for money, you have banker relationship, you have to have an accountant, you need to sort all these things out. And when you even ask people also that you're passionate about this, who else is in that industry? They say, oh no, I mean, you need to know before you go into, who are the players there? What are they doing? Are they getting funding? And you always think that your own will be different. I'm not saying it's not going to be different, but think of it as like a business, and don't always think to yourself, oh my goodness, let me just go and I just want to go and do the work and we have this CEO written there. And there's so many organizations out there now that are trying to merge and talk to different people that have different passions and say, okay, how can we do this together? And that's why I was saying that we need to just find ways of collaborating and partnering. Let somebody else go and run it. You have a certain amount that you have every year, put it in that business and let somebody else run it. Of course, you can get all the information that is necessary. And then, but collaboration as we are moving, and people are talking about dwindling resources, you must realize that collaboration and partnerships, if this is your passion or this is what you want to do, you are passionate about it, your heart is beating in the morning when you wake up, those children on the road, I want to die. Go and find people that you can work with and then continue the work. But I completely agree with Innocent. This is like a difficult time. Even to start a business, you have to be very sure that, this is what you want to do. And you have to be very careful about, going out to do it. And a lot of the businesses are surviving now are re-strategizing, changing and turning things out. And even with that, it's difficult. And you can only find a few that might even get to the other side of the river when all this is done. So find ways of working with somebody else. I mean, I have a lot of NGOs I support, and I've been supporting them for 10 years straight now. And nobody needs to know that I'm supporting them. I know that I'm doing it, and I understand my passion, and I'm very involved in the NGO. But I mean, they let them do their work, and I'm happy not to have an Osayi Alile Foundation if need be. But we have to decide what makes sense to do and realize that it is a business, and you have to run it in that way.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you. Quite a few of the questions I think have been kind of answered. And I think just for people who maybe Innocent, maybe it's time to do like a masterclass on just having people think through a bit of what Osayi is saying. It's my passion doesn't mean I have to run it. It's my passion doesn't mean I have to set up a structure to drive it. That's about me. And then also your point about sort of market solutions. There's a lady here, Temitope, who says she's been running an initiative to train market women in 6 centers across Lagos. And 70% have been from personal funds, 30% from friends, started focusing on sourcing for grants, but haven't gotten anything positive, and that they had to support a number of these women in these times. Now, the issue is that we're supporting them with training to do what? Obviously, the training is to empower them. At what point is the training free to training that they then get to pay for in sort of each one reach one type model?
Exactly.
And it becomes continuous. So it's not a constant drawing. So they feel that, okay, you come, you call us for training, you feed us lunch. So there's no challenge to them to also replicate or pay it forward. That's the phrase I was trying to look for. So something to begin to think about. That. Go ahead, Innocent, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to collaborate with Osayi to run a masterclass on some of these issues. But just to answer the question from that lady, that's actually one area that the market is best positioned to solve that. The Bank of Industry, the Development Bank, and all lenders who give to that level of enterprises have TA facilities, technical assistance, to prepare those people to absorb the loans and investment that they are making. So if you have a proven, underline my word, a proven model of preparing these market women to access these funds, please approach Bank of Industry. I can tell you, I know the executive director of microcredit, Toyin, and the group head, Uloma Ike. They will be very happy to engage you people to do that. But you have to show that you have a proven model, and it must be something that is validated and can really, and you have a track record of how many women have through that training and capacity building and have done well in their enterprises. These are things you need to package and go say, can I be part of your TA facility for these people you are investing in? Market can solve that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So we have a masterclass coming up. I'm excited about that. Innocent, this one to you, that the merger point you raised needs a bit more, just spend some time on it a bit. How do I know the right people to merge with? And who can we go to for advice on non-profit mergers? Just like for-profit companies can easily consult the existing body of knowledge on mergers and acquisitions. Is this something Axe and Ford would be happy to commit to supporting, incubating?
So that's a very important question. And it's one of the
Gbenga, by the way. Let me call him out.
It's a very important question, and it's one of the growth areas that the sector need to embrace, in the sense that as we preach this gospel of mergers and the other perverse one, acquisition, the thing is, where do you have the technical competencies to prepare groups that want to go that route? And if it goes wrong, because mergers can also go wrong.
What happens?
What happens? But there's a lot to learn. Actually, we are supporting the Lagos Business School. Maybe it's something we need to take up with them. They are a non-profit leadership program. We've been supporting it now for 3 modules on mergers within the non-profit sector. But it begins with values. You can easily see, even the interactions you have every day, when you attend workshop, when you attend meeting, you see groups that share the same values with you. You see leaders that are on the same tangent with you. You see leaders that are as appalled as you are about the way the sector is going. So that's where the conversation begins. And then you can appoint people. I'm hoping that it's also a growth area for consultants to come and assess the two organizations and know where the high points and the pain points are, so that if you imagine, how do you go about it in a manner that is sustainable? But even with the best of intentions, mergers do go wrong. People do come up and have different values than the ones the founders, and then how do you dissolve, or how do you settle that? So it's a growth area, but Lagos Business School is best positioned, drawing from experiences in the private sector, to develop a model on this as part of the non-profit leadership management training that we are funding them to. So thanks for that. I've taken a note of it. I will be discussing with folks at Lagos Business School to see if they can incorporate it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you very much. Then there's another question that has come up, basically that talks about the percentages between operations and programs. That a lot of funders focus on programs. Obviously, you don't want your beneficiaries or grantees to move into new houses and buy jeeps and spend money lavishly. But the organizations do need to be operational for the programs to get delivered. So how do you navigate that tricky balance?
So
who is that to? Okay, to.
Osayi, do you want to answer it, or do you want?
I'd like both of you to speak to it. So maybe whoever wants to go first, and both of you, I'd like to speak to it though.
Okay, Osayi, why don't you go first? Ladies first. I don't mind.
Miss Aino, so when they're dashing money, you allow me to go first, though. All right. Okay. For us, we do, as I said before, we're just 3 years old, but we do give funding on both sides in terms of the operations of the organization, because we do understand that You cannot be supporting a program and not take care of the operations of the organization. But also all these things too, you have to be very careful how it's done. So it's things that we have to watch out for. We know a percentage, we don't go above a certain percentage. And of course, and I'm talking to really smaller NGOs. A lot of times they come to us and they put in, so you have 7 staff and you put your 7 staff salaries in there. You want us to buy you all the ACs in the office, a new car, those things are things that we will not consider. Because we want to know that the program that we're working at, maybe 3 of your people are working on that program with us. So that's what we'll cover. So we do make sure that there's a percentage of cost that we take over from the organizations for operations, because we want our program to run. But we also give a certain percentage for sustainability as well, because we also would think to ourselves that we want the organization to be sustained, longer than after we leave. Because you are not going to, there's no way you're going to, give grants to an organization for years. There must be a certain period of time, 3 years, 5 years. I know every organization is very different about this. So we're all different. So you speak to another person, someone also has their own policies that are in place that works for them. So every organization is very different. Some organizations will not give you any operational, they will not want to spend 1 kobo on your operations, and that's the way they do things. So you have to understand that and find other ways to manage your own operational expenses as well. So don't think to yourself that it's not, I always tell a lot of NGOs that you don't feel that it's your entitlements. There's no entitlement here. It's a policy that the organization has. And of course, as they also grow, they might start to think that maybe they should add 1 or 2 things to it. So everybody is going through a process and adding a few things, taking out a few things, changing their focus. And this is how organizations are run. But we do both of them. But of course, our percentage in terms of operation is not as high as should be. But we'll give you money for cost to cover the cost of your operations and also to cover the cost of running your programs as well. Yemi, let me say something quickly before Innocent chips in. One of the problems we have with a lot of smaller nonprofits is that sometimes it's the, I don't want to use a negative word, but they kind of cover a lot of things, or the fear of speaking the truth a lot of times to what is going on in the organization. And I tell them a lot of times from the beginning that once you say it as it is, it's easier for us to manage a situation together. So, but especially because you are bringing value to us and we want this thing to work. But a lot of times now we go into organizations, we are helping them with volunteers to help them with their books. And then we realize that they have a lot more problems that they're actually saying. So they can hide everything and they feel to themselves that let us hide this under the table so that Art Foundation doesn't know what is happening. And once you hide and we find out, it seems as if there's a trust issue that comes into play. But once you're able to say from the beginning, these are the issues that we're having, and this is what we're doing, and this is what we're trying to do to rectify it, even if we're not thinking of some things before, what happens is that we begin to understand that these things, we have to think about it, and we begin to work with you to achieve your goals, because we want you to achieve them. We want you to bring added value to the community that you're working with. So as much as possible, let's all be very open, ethical about how we come out to ask for some of these things, and let's truth prevail. And once truth prevails, it's easier for us to work together and get to where we need to get to.
Great, thank you. Innocent?
Yeah, so a very important question, and I endorse everything Osayi said. We also need to understand where that is coming from. So you see, in 2005, the donor agencies facilitated with this Paris donor effect, of the concern that many donors are spending a lot of their money on themselves. So they pegged what donors should spend on themselves to 20% or even under. So armed with that declaration, many donors started restricting the percentage of the funds they give that can be applied to overhead, particularly the bilaterals and multilaterals. And how did they enforce that? They started engaging commercial companies, who have large operations and who are able to demonstrate that what they are getting is just 2 or 3% to their the cost that they are expending on the project. And with that, NGOs who have very small operations suffered in the process, which led to this whole issue. When you are getting funding from any bilateral or multilateral, you can hardly get more than 5% to apply yourself. And how have the philanthropic sector, especially private foundation, responded to this? Speaking for Ford Foundation, about 5 years ago, we came to a conclusion about giving 20 to 25% of the grants that we give to covering in what we call indirect costs. And this indirect cost does not even include the salaries that the NGOs are able to show that they are paying these people to work directly on the project. Because they are not recovered, it's not a lot of donors that agree to cover that. So we give 20%, to cover that. And we have even gone further to establish what we call BUILD, which is Building Effective Institutions Fund. And we fund groups over 5 years, and it's almost 50-50. 50 goes to general support, and 50% go to project support, just to ensure that NGOs or our partners do not engage in what everyone calls creative accounting. How do we cover all these costs that donors are reluctant to bear? So we want our partners to be transparent with us about the indirect costs that they are bearing in implementing our project. And we will structure our grants in such a way that they will, to a reasonable extent, recover those costs, so that when they implement the project and we hold them to account for the implementation, they won't say, oh, we didn't have funds to cover this, we didn't have, especially now, many people have been forced to work from home. So it's not every organization that equip their staff with the technology to work from home. You have internet coming up, you have electricity, you have laptop and all of that. If they don't have specific component of the grant they receive to cover this cost, somebody is going to cover it, even though they may not declare it upfront to you. So way of saying, donors, please increase to indirect costs. We all have been in that category and we know what it feels like out there.
Thank you. And this brings us to the last question as we round up. Both of you have 2 o'clock calls, so we're gonna let you go in another 5 minutes. Someone asked, how do you see technology affecting the space, given the fact that a lot of also the space, the traditional NGO space deals with workshops, meetings, conferences, very physical things. How do you guys see that technology changing that post-COVID?
I'm of the opinion that technology has already done.
Has already done. We're Google here talking.
Well, I mean, the bank I work with, they had their AGM for the first time on their web. Everything was on YouTube. I mean, every service is done now. I mean, we just have to. We're working with a situation we cannot. We don't have the power to change. So you as an individual has to just find out what's the best way to manage the situation and turn things around. I was talking to someone yesterday and he was saying that he has told the NGO is working with, you have to find other ways of doing things. You just have to, because let's be sincere, even if everything goes back to normal, I mean, we go back to work. How many people want their children to be sitting in a room and you teaching them one-on-one? Nobody, everybody's careful. Nobody wants, I mean, with adults, you can say when you get there, wash your hand. But with kids, if you're teaching them IT, you want them on the computer and all those things. So you have to think of other ways of managing the situation. Every class is now, the whole school is now online. I mean, my son has been in school now for the past month or 6 weeks now, and it's all been online. And I know it's not easy because we have communities that cannot afford to do this. And so that's why you see some states, like my state in Edo State, they found another way around it. I mean, their classes are now on radio, they send in information. You know, they're trying to find ways to get, and they're paying for some of these things as well. So we have to just open our minds to be a bit more fluid and creative and say, okay, how do we change some things that we're doing? Now you mentioned Yemi of Light Bank. I mean, she does oxygen, but she's now doing COVID. So, I mean, I'm not saying everybody should rush into that training, but I'll give you a real life example. We're supposed to do a training program for COVID, and because I'm in the COVID committee, and a lot of the trainings cannot be done we couldn't move people fast enough. And we know that the situation that we're all facing now. So, I mean, we're sitting down thinking about it. Let's just do a video. And I thought virtual. I said, we'll call in. And then someone, the commissioner was looking at me, Madam, virtual. You know what state I'm in? How many people have the internet? Because, you know, you're thinking based on what you know. And immediately I said, okay, I actually apologized and took myself backward. I said, okay, how does this work? So we have done a 12 class thing, practical training, and we're translating it in different language. How do you wear the glove? How do you take it off? What do you do to your hair? How do you pack it? Don't wear jewelry, you know, basic things. And we're sending, so what is the best way to send it to you? WhatsApp or on flash drive or this? They say flash drive. We have sent it on flash drive. Someone else says, email it to me, then I will send it to everybody else, done that way. Someone is telling me, just send it to us on WhatsApp. And then I will send it to all the different people on WhatsApp. They will watch it. And then we're even doing the monitoring and evaluation on WhatsApp as well. We're going to get everybody to call in, tell us what they learned, how they're using it, show some, you know. So you have to just begin to think outside the box. At least for this particular period, and to be able to sustain yourself and to continue and ride the tide, as we said. I think Innocent will have something else, other examples as well.
Thank you. Before we go, I'll use that as your final sort of speaking. Osayi, any other final comments before we go for you? Any other thing you want to share before?
I mean, I think from the beginning I said it that we're at interesting times, and everybody knows this. It's not something I see hidden. We all have to just find ways to manage. And I gave the analogy at the beginning of swimming across a river. And we know that regardless of what happens, if you're in the middle of the sea, you just have to swim. You cannot stay still there and just say, okay, when the tide stops, I will just get up. No. No matter how tired you are, you can see the land, and you just have to swim and get there. And that's what we all have to do. One way or the other, changing the way we think, changing the way we do things, looking at our bottom line, getting involved in all these webinars and learning new things, speaking out and asking questions that you not necessarily will not ask, and just being more proactive about your own situation and manage it. And then another thing someone said to me yesterday, be still. What you cannot change, you cannot change. What you can change, you can change. So don't be overwhelmed and be fearful about the times. And just say, okay, what can we do different, and how best can we do it in a different way? Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Osayi. Innocent, your thoughts on technology, and then also your final comments.
Well, technology is the way going forward. I don't think we can ever recover from the discoveries we made about how much we can do at home and using technology than pounding our feet on the street. So it can only continue, but then it should also our society. The majority of our populations have no. It's easier and convenient to deal with the big groups who can access the. Let's not forget that majority of groups, especially those working at community level, are not able to switch to technology, and we should do the best we can to enable them to catch up while also relating with them. My last word is that whenever I have this kind of webinar, people ask me questions. Why, what makes a proposal fundable? Why are some proposals funded? Or why do some groups get and others don't? And my answer to them is that actually the proposal consideration is the last in a long chain of considerations that donors consider before they make decisions. It begins with your institutional capacity of your organization to actually run the program that you are applying to deliver, the governance and the management system. The same way before a bank gives you a loan, they do fiduciary check and all of that. We do the same. We want to make sure that you have a sound governance and management system. We want to make sure that you have the track record in the area that you are applying to support. We want to make sure that you have reputation in the field. Then lastly is actually the proposal. So the proposal is just 5 to 10% of what is considered before a group is funded. Considering all of this, you can see how heavily stacked against new groups are in getting funding from donors. And then the question is, why do you want to bother setting up new groups when you can work with existing ones? And that is my last and parting words. I've enjoyed this conversation, and thank you for putting it together.
So thank you everyone for joining us. I think at our peak, we had almost 70 people on the webinar. Thank you very much, Innocent and Osayi, for making yourselves available.
Thank you for having us.
And I look forward to, I'm very big on this mergers and acquisition conversation. So I really am looking forward to what LBS is able to put together as we try to put some sanity in this sector. So everyone stay safe, wash your hands, wear your masks, and social distance as much as you can. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.